Want to not be boring? Want to role play better? Stick around as the Knights of Last Call discuss role-playing and how to not suck at it. Welcome back to The Nightlife. I'm Derek Melenda, the Game Master of Knights of Last Call, joined by Bob, Nick, and Tim. Matt isn't feeling well today, and so we thought we would take this opportunity to discuss role-playing. And what does it mean, and how do you get better at it? Role-playing is a pretty tricky subject. Term gets thrown around a lot. So maybe let's start. What does role-playing mean to you?
Well, for me, I mean, the most important thing is that I think we may have discussed on a previous Nightlife, but you can role play in literally any system.
Sure.
Because at its core, all role playing is choosing to do what your character would do in a situation as opposed to what you would do or
right.
what is necessarily tactically the best or something like that. You might make a subpar decision because your character would have made that decision more realistically. You're role playing. It applies to combat. It applies to not combat. That's really all it takes. You don't have to. My first session, you don't have to be any blue scars all over his body and the most descriptive thing. You're right. You're not writing a novel. You don't have to. It's fun. It's fucking fun.
It sounds good.
It's unnecessary to role play.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, right, so two things. I think number one, people conflate role-playing with Critical Role. And
that's how I first thought of it. When you say role-playing, I go, the first time I started was Critical Role.
And so there's been this, there's been this effect in the community. People think, okay, role-playing is Critical Role. It's called a role-playing game. So role-playing must mean whatever they're doing at Critical Role. And what you're seeing at Critical Role is a bunch of very trained voice actors and actresses standing around doing a sort of pseudo improv storytelling and doing it quite well with a game master who has a very elaborate script, which the players may or may not have had input into, with these very, very complicated storylines, doing so in a very professional setting with very professional people. And it's great. You are not Critical Role. You're like the community theater version of Critical Role, right? You're like going to your kids', middle school play. That's your level of role playing, right?
Okay.
So role playing number one does not mean acting. Acting and role playing are two different things. Being very dramatic, creating pathos, driving empathy, creating real emotions in other people, that's hard to do. That's acting, and that's not role playing. Number two, role playing is not speaking in a funny voice.
No.
I wouldn't have thought that when I first started, but
right. No,
right. Because
Critical Role.
Right.
That's how I started.
Right.
With IV.
You think I have to talk like this to be a role player? Yeah.
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 No. No. My most role played character, ironically, in the 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, which is very combat centric, and a lot of people hated it because of that. But Nerix was my rogue, and he was 100% my most role played character. Not because I ever talked in a funny halfling voice, but I had a plan for the character. He had a goal, and I took actions in the game to meet that goal. So he wanted to basically, if you've ever seen The Usual Suspects, he was basically Kaiser Soze minus murdering everybody at the end.
Spoiler alert.
So he had a secret identity to protect, and I took actions in game to protect that were definitely suboptimal.
Yeah, and so I think Tim hit on the first key to creating good role playing. Because what Tim defined as role playing is what I would define as role playing, which is simply this. I want to act in a certain way. Okay? Me, in my real life, I have a personality. And when a situation presents itself, for example, the classic example is, that guy has a temper. And when someone at work tells him he didn't do a good job, rather than handling it well, he handles it poorly. He blows up. He loses his head, and he creates a lot of trouble for himself and for other people. That's a trait. Now, he would ideally not have that trait, right? But he that's his trait of his personality. That's how he acts. So role playing is simply playing in a way that is consistent with your character, right? The three things that you need in order to do that are, as Tim said, number one is your character has to have motivation.
Yeah, that's what I think I'm lacking.
You need to know, because here's the thing, and maybe it's a question list, right? Which is this, what does your character always do? What would your character never do? right? And just from answering those two questions, you can already start to sort of paint a picture of what that character is.
Well, and you build the character, not the character sheet.
Yeah, right.
But and this is what I always felt in. One, I'm the boring player. I play off my character sheet, and this is what I'm trying to develop and get better at. And I think one of these things are, like you're saying, a goal, a motivation. And I think that's actually really good. What am I never going to do?
Right. So, what is it that your character is trying to achieve within the context of this imaginary fictional game? If you're playing a sandbox, if you've taken a look at our other video here where we discuss sandbox versus adventures, if you're playing in a sandbox, you can make whatever goal you want. My character wants to own his own shipping company. My character wants to sail east across the unknown sea and explore the lands that no man has ever seen. Or she wants to become a wealthy merchant and control all the lands south of the Veil. Okay.
It doesn't have to be super elaborate. A couple sentence backstory,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
That's what you're kind of thinking.
Yeah. But the other thing is, if you're playing in an adventure path, okay, fine. Work with your game master, work with your DM. What are the things that are going to be happening in this adventure path? What are the ways that I can tie my character's motivation into this adventure path? If you've been watching any of our actual plays up here, you'll know that Burl, Matt's character, joined the campaign ostensibly seeking the lost city of gold, Zin Shalast. Well, that also happens to be where the final fight of the campaign is.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But it works really well because it gives his character a strong motivation. If you're playing an adventure path and you know that this adventure path is about the characters follow a bunch of leads and clues and they go deep into the dungeon and then they go into the Underdark and they go way miles underneath the ground to hidden cities that are located at the center of the earth, don't make your character's motivation that they want to settle down and become a farmer, right? Or that they want to climb the highest mountain. That's not what this campaign is going to be about. You're going to be a juxtaposed to it. Don't create your background in a vacuum. Do it with your DM's help. But I think if you know what your character is willing to fight for, if you know what your character is willing to die for, if you know what your character will always do, what your character will never do, just answering that immediately gives you sort of, an idea of, hey, that's the kind of person he is. He'll always be the first person, he always charges into the room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's a brash person. He doesn't think things through, and then he does other things, And don't be afraid. There's an old saying in novel writing, show, don't tell. What does that mean? It means don't, in the book, if you're writing a novel, don't say, Nick was greedy, right? Don't write that out because that's telling someone. Show them that Nick was greedy. Nick always is never around when the bill has to be split. Nick is always
taking a penny, never leaving a penny.
Exactly. Takes the penny, doesn't leave the penny. And the player and the person reading the book goes, oh, Nick's greedy.
Yeah, I know what Nick's about.
Don't do that. And you don't have to do that in a role-playing game. We're not novelists, okay? We're not novelists. We're not actors, okay? We're not screenwriters. Be obtuse about it. Tell the people at the table, hey, my character's really greedy, so I'm going to take this extra gold. Right?
No, just take it.
Because
that's your character.
And a
That's
fight
what they're going to do.
Because there's a million things going on and everyone's trying to pay attention to their character sheet and what the DM is saying. If you're trying to be subtle and you're like, oh, my character is secretly a coward, but I don't want anyone to know. So I'm going to play really coyly and no one will ever know that I'm a coward, even though I am a coward. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're just creating work.
You've eliminated the purpose of giving your character the coward.
What I'm saying is, because it even highlights it at the table, okay? Tim's character goes down, and Bob is playing a healer, a cleric, but Bob is a coward. And Bob at the table says, Tim, I would love to come over there and save your character.
You're on your own, dude.
There's a dude nearby.
But Aberith, my cleric, is a coward. And instead of rushing across the battlefield to aid his friend in his moment of needs, Aberith falls back and casts a protective spell against himself.
I feel that also adds a level of humor to the group and that.
Absolutely.
Well,
if you're going to help me, like kind of afraid.
It paints a picture of the mind though too. It sets it in there, and it kind of does.
Do you know Aberith now?
A little bit, yes. Yeah. And that's where it
Bob would never be a healer,
right?
But to your point of, you don't need to be a storyteller, you don't need to be an actor.
Yeah,
you don't.
Right.
You absolutely don't. That's just a case in point of just slightly describing what you're doing and why you're doing it. You don't need to literally say, I am this, and so I'm doing that.
And that's the key to role playing is, again, be obtuse. Do not try to be, don't try to be subtle about it. Be blunt with it. Be like, my character's a coward. That's why I'm not doing this. Because I promise you, it'll be way better for everyone at the table. The DM will get everyone at the table will pick up what you're putting down. If you try to be really subtle with it and you try to show them, it might miss it. And here's the beautiful thing. That might only be for the first month or two of your game, because eventually it's going to get a point where, Nick's character charges across, the room, and then the middle of the room opens up into a pit of lava, and, and then it's Bob's turn, and he goes, I'm going to cast a couple of summon spells and stay on this side of the room. And everyone's going to go, oh, of course he is.
Bob the coward.
Because
it's been established.
Yeah, they know if
in the lore.
If you do something,
canon.
If you do something or act in a certain way, and everybody at your party, at your table nods their head like, classic Aberith, then you know you're doing something right.
Oh, absolutely.
Is this like when I'm frugal every time we play?
Yes, but we know you're frugal.
Yeah, but that's also part of you.
Yeah, but I can't tell if that's your character, Bob, or if that's just you.
But I think that's Bob not role playing. I think that's Bob playing himself as a person.
But that's the other thing.
Azius might not be frugal.
Yeah, we don't know.
But that's the other thing too, is that you don't have to be completely separate from what you're doing. That is a perfect example of you can make your character a little bit similar traits of what you have. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Especially if you're new. I feel like it's easier for me to transition that way.
So here's the thing. I will disagree with that statement.
Okay.
I think you're right, but I'm going to disagree with that because I think the reason you play role-playing games is to be something you're very much not. Be in real life, Bob, you're penny pinching, you're taking care of your family, the money's tight. Here, be a big baller. Waste it. Let it pour and make it rain in the
Buy your own tavern.
Yeah.
Do you know how much anxiety that's going to cause him as a person?
Anxiety, Derek.
Okay. Make it rain in the streets, right? Because you have the
next level pimp,
right? And you have an incredible amount of opportunity here to be something you're not, and that's what makes role playing games so fun, and that's what makes them so cathartic. There's a reason they use role playing in therapy sessions because. You're like, oh wow, getting
I can do something totally different.
Something in this other perspective, give me maybe relieve some of that anxiety that I have about that incident in my real life. But getting back to the point about role playing, time is a precious resource at the table. No one wants to sit there and listen to you poorly mumble through a million things. So rather than telling me what you're doing, because that's okay, but I'm more interested in why are you doing it. Right? If you can focus on the why and tell people at the table, if you don't know, ask them.
So you mean like I would ask Tim, why are you doing that?
No, I mean, ask people, guys, I don't know what my barbarian would do in this situation.
Oh, this happened when I just debated whether to kill that horse in the beginning episodes. I was like,
that's right.
Yeah, I'm going to let the horse go. They're like, you're kind of raging. I'm like, oh, I would definitely kill the horse here.
If you take a look here, if you take a look here at this moment, there was an incident where the group found a wild horse that had been driven mad by fear. It could be potentially a sweet mount for people, but Bob and it broke free, and Bob's character wanted to tame it, but we kind of had this conversation we stopped. It's fine. You're not being televised. You're not like this.
Yeah.
But we stopped.
We did it televised.
We stopped and even though we're being televised, because this is real. This is what a real table's like. You stop the game and you go, let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. What would be internally consistent for Azius? Well, we've established that he goes into a rage and he doesn't think about anything, and he just perceives threats and dangers and smashes them into pieces until they're no longer a threat. Yeah, this horse is maybe scared and acting out, but in a rage, Azius doesn't see that way. And you're like, you know what? I agree with that assessment. And we played it that way.
And I remember it, and it was cool. Yeah. I didn't really want to kill it, but that's what happened.
And that is role-playing 101.
Yep.
Right there is when when you do something that isn't what you, the player, want, but is internally consistent with your character's motives, beliefs, and personality. And again, focusing on the why. Mm-hmm. Why am I on this adventure? Why am I taking this action? Nick, you play a paladin.
Correct.
So, kind of like almost every turn, you can have a choice to make. Like, do I go and attack this monster, or do I stay and protect my friends? And you could just take that action, but why not think about it for a moment or even discuss it with the group? And if you do take an action because Escanor wants to protect his friends, he'd love to smite vengeance on that creature, but he sees that Burl is in danger and he hangs back because he knows he needs to protect the weak. Whoa. whoa, okay. So we're getting a sense of who Escanor is.
Yep.
Escanor's the guy to throw his line out, body down on the line, Whereas if you say justice must be delivered, the best defense is good offense. I'm gonna
Ahead we go.
Here we go. If you tell everybody that why you're doing why you're taking that action, then everyone goes, okay, cool. Your character's becoming more 3-dimensional to me.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to emphasize personally that, everyone watching this right now is probably in the middle of their own campaigns, whether you're role playing or not. You can have your character develop these interests at any time. Don't feel like because you're 2 adventures into a 4-adventure campaign that your character can't suddenly have motivations. Maybe they legitimately were just whimsical at first and wanted to go have a good time in an adventure, right? Like, that's viable. People just want to get rich. But then while doing that, they discovered another purpose. I had the advantage joining the Knights late. So, and Magnamar happened to exist. So that's almost the sole reason that Gwildor is a detective, right? Is because I talked to Derek when I was coming in and I was like, okay, what's the landscape? What's going on? Okay, Magnamar, we've got this good hook. So Gwildor became a detective. Now, my thoughts for my character, I've started developing them a little bit. I would like for him to kind of become like a Judge Dredd and create the Judge Society, because now that he's out of Magnamar for the first time in his life, he's just been solving crimes. Shit gets real when you're fighting 10 ogres, hillbilly ogres, and he wants to serve justice, but you can't just arrest a handful of ogres and throw them in jail. Right. So that's going to be an interesting character development path that I want to bring Gwildor on.
Sort of the difference between the city justice system versus the frontier justice system.
Right. And eventually, I'm even talking maybe we have an alignment shift, because right now he's lawful good. He's been following the law and upholding justice in Magnamar. But as he gets out here, maybe the lawful becomes neutral, right? Because he realizes that he's like, look, I can't always do things by the law to serve justice. And then that naturally trails into the Judge Society.
About the role-playing sort of developing the character sheet versus the character sheet saying, no, this is what I am. It's like, okay, well, the story and the way I'm playing it and the way I'm feeling and the way that character's feeling, actually, I'm going to switch it over because we're developing a different way.
I would say this. It's very counterintuitive to, again, what most people think. But if you level up and you're looking at your new feat choice and you choose a feat because it feels right for your character, that's role-playing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? You might be doing that alone at home. But you're thinking about that feat would be pretty cool, but this feat feels more appropriate for my character.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's why I took the detective background. Because of character creation, not because I was min-maxing in that case. I was just like, what is my character's background?
Yeah.
And that's where you might not always be picking the strongest spells or the best feats, because why would I do that? That does not fit my character's, personality traits or motives or anything. It's a pretty cool spell. It's badass. And I can probably use it now, but that doesn't fit with what you're trying to do, that narrative that you're trying to set up.
If you're doing a narrative, because right now I don't know what I'm doing. But I want to bring up another good point, because
you think you're boring.
Well, I do think I'm boring. And the one thing I was talking about with Aaron.
Leave a comment. Do you think Bob is
boring?
And leave a like if you think Bob is boring.
Aaron was like, revenge is a boring trope.
Sure.
And that was the only thing I could think of. Because I'm new to this. I just started D&D 5e about a year ago now, and I'm playing Pathfinder 2. But it's like, what is Asius doing, and why is he doing it? I'm just starting to sort of dive into this.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have an existential dilemma with your own, character.
No. Right.
But I have nothing right now other than I was a bartender, and now I hate giants. That's the only two things I have, and so I don't want it to be this cliche. Well, I just want to revenge and level up, but to a sense, some of that is right. Some of that is to maybe, but
this is where you don't know what you were at the beginning, but to Tim's point, you can grow and change with the progress of your campaigns. You don't have to be, well, this is what I started with, so I have to end the whole entire thing with that.
That's very true, Nick.
You can grow your character just like a human being grows.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep. Especially, I would argue, the best role playing is if something monumental happens in your game.
Oh, absolutely.
You should change your character's outlook on things. If your character doesn't change, remember I asked you, I said, what would you never do? What do you always do? What would you die for? What do you live for? I don't know. Ask yourself that every couple levels, or something happens and it's a catastrophic change. Change it up, change your alignment, change your thing and say my character would never do X. Then something happens, right? And imagine if we've established, right? That Nick's character never does X, you know? And over 5, 6 levels, there's opportunities. And then finally, in a very dire moment, or in a very opportune moment, he does it. Wow. What a shift. Now, if that happens, and then we go to the next session, and it's like nothing happened, that feels bad. No, at that point, that's where Nick goes, hey, listen, I might retrain some feats. I might change my alignment up. I might, switch up my character's personality, because that was a huge moment for me.
Bob, you've already done this. You started off as an alchemist.
That's very true.
No,
you started off as an alchemist, and you started playing. And you're like, "This is. I want to go in and I want to smash." So you changed it up.
Bob. Is that
that can also be Aesius.
Aesius did that too. Absolutely. Aesius was like, "I'm a bartender. I like mixing drinks and stuff like that, and that's my background." But then it got to him, and he's like, "You know what? I just want to go in with my hammer, my Warhammer Destiny, and I just want to smash it."
He just got madder and madder and discovered the rage that he never knew he had.
Exactly.
Map attacking.
Yeah, map attacking.
The reason I bring that up,
done that.
The next point that I was going to bring up is that narrative, like that I don't say things like I'm going to map attack.
I think that, okay, I'll be honest with you. No, wait, listen. That's the least important part.
You think?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
You think?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because I literally just almost sort of read my character sheet off.
No.
You
don't need to do that.
A motivation tops description 95% of the time.
Okay.
Because honestly, you know what? I'm gonna hurt some feathers here.
Uh-oh.
Okay? Like, most of the time when people describe what they're doing, it's kind of cringe.
Yeah.
See, I love it. I love it.
It's kind of
if it's done well,
some
it's
people are
great.
good. Some people are good at it. You know who I'm talking about.
I know.
Some people are very good at it. But most of the time, it's pretty cringy. And the other problem with it is, like in film,
It feels forced sometimes.
it does feel forced. But in film, a spellcaster can cast a spell and energy can ripple all around them or whatever. And it takes 2 seconds. And it's awesome and it's visual and you get it immediately. Well, we don't have that luxury.
Right.
Right. And so what should have been a fast, like, I have seen better, like, no descriptions where it's just like, it's like, and then it's, it's someone's time and they're like, fireball, bitch, and it's like,
it's a better moment than anything that could have been said.
It's way better than them going like, energy streams from the ether and I gather it into my hands. Red hot coals begin burning through my fingers as my eyes turn to pure white and the it's like,
I love what you just did there.
But
but it's like when Burl cast Searing Light on, remind me of the mob who turned into a lich or a werewolf afterwards?
No, the guy
He had like two
no,
forms.
Foxglove.
Oh, Foxglove.
Yeah,
He turned to a ghoul,
When he just blasted him when he
he
died.
was down and pleading for his life, and Burl's just like, Searing Light!
Matt wasn't like, Burl looks at him. He thinks about, for a moment, about granting him a reprieve. He thinks of the times that he, in his life, had made mistakes. Right. Was this man's tragedy not but a metaphor for his own mistakes? Had he not been granted? No, there was no time for this. No, Matt went, Searing Light to this guy.
I feel like I was listening to Audible right there when you were talking. And then when he did Searing Light, everyone was laughing, having a freaking awesome time because it was hilarious.
It was the same thing with the map attack, though, because you're a
I didn't
barbarian
even know what to do.
Yeah, but you're a barbarian
Let's
who's
be clear.
raging, so
map
it makes
attack
sense.
was terrible.
yes, never, yeah.
But it made sense to his character.
No, it did not.
No.
That was
He's
just
a
terrible.
raging
Nope,
barbarian.
Nope, that was just terrible. Nope, that was just
I
terrible.
get made fun of critically on Friday nights now.
No, saying he continues swinging, frothing at the mouth, that's fine. Map
Right.
attack,
So
not fun.
again, people watch Critical Role and they think that everything that they say has to be like something that, would take up 2 or 3 paragraphs in a novel. It's not. And a lot of times, look, I don't care if you're playing 5th edition or 2nd edition, right? Combats take too long, right? Next video, combats take too long.
For sure.
And you trying to be a wannabe novelist or storyteller is not going to get us there any faster.
Right.
So sometimes it's far better for you to be punchy, quick, and short and move on, right? The exciting part of the game is the die roll. But if we know what is at stake on that die roll, it becomes far more interesting, right?
And that's the background motivation.
And that's the motivation, right? And let it be in play, and also too, don't let so many people put their background and then they go, okay, I'm going to play to that. And then that's imitated, that's written in stone, but it's far, right? But nobody at the table knows anything about your background. I don't care if you wrote it or not. They didn't read it. They didn't. Right. They didn't read it. Okay. So even if they did read it, they didn't remember it. So, but what they will remember are the things that happened at the table while you were playing together. So if you can reference things that happened while everyone was present, they are far more likely to understand what that motivation is. If you go, oh, this reminds me of the time when I was a young dwarf lad, and like no one's gonna be like, everyone's gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're like, okay. Remember when Rip Nugget crit me that one time, and I said, no way, I'm gonna get back, and then I swung back and I, killed him or whatever. That's like this time, and they're like, everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, right? Reference. You are building the history of your world each and every gaming session, right? So tap into that. And like I said, pull your party members. If you don't know your character, maybe they do.
You guys all might know my guy better than me.
Right? And one of my major final thoughts here is if you're struggling getting started, you do not have to be unique. You don't have to come up with a unique character backstory. You don't have to write your own book. One of my favorite characters of all time was the Shadow Fang in a Mutants and Masterminds campaign. He was Batman, but with wolves. Literally, that was my entire motivation for making the character.
You like Batman, you liked wolves.
Right. And that's
combine them.
I love it.
That's literally all you have to do to come up with a character background of role-playing.
And you loved it and the people loved it.
Oh, everyone loved it.
It worked great.
Then that's perfect.
One of my best one-liners of all time has come from that.
That's true.
I will not say it completely out of context because it will suck. So
Oh,
I'm not going to ruin that for you. But that might be another video.
Offline.
If you want it, ask me in the comments.
Yeah.
It was I can confirm it was Tim's best one-liner of all time. It was the best one-liner of definitely of that game.
Absolutely.
And possibly top 10 in gaming history for me.
There you go.
Yeah, it was
pretty incredible.
It was fun. But again, Batman with wolves.
So before we wrap up here, I think I just want to kind of reiterate and kind of maybe go around. So, Nick, you've had the opportunity here to sort of play with us and, sort of develop and grow. So what do you think are some of your challenges to role playing? When you think about role playing, what concerns you? What makes you feel like I'm not up for this?
I don't really think anything really makes it feel like I'm not up for this. It's just one thing that's nice though is like having a group of people that are supportive behind me.
Absolutely.
It's like I'm gonna make mistakes, right? But that's kind of what your characters can do as well. So I left the party. I left Burl and Gwildor behind, and they kind of got killed. Oops. All right. Well, now I got to rethink about that.
Right.
Yes, there's a tactical aspect of it, but then it's like, what would my character really do?
Well, and
That's
so,
right.
and I would argue this, right? See, this is how you take something and you turn it into something awesome, right? Maybe you take that moment, which was obviously a Nick tactical mistake.
Yeah, that was awful.
Where the paladin abandoned the two spellcasters to go in a melee. But then you flip it around, you guys, okay, guys, Escanor was this hot-headed fool, used to working on his own and was always sort of leading the charge. And then he saw what his brashness and his callousness cost other people. He endangered the lives of his fellow party members.
Never
and
again.
he goes, never again. And now Escanor is like the first guy to leap on a landmine, or a grenade for his party members to try to make up for that. And maybe he feels guilty about that,
And if I remember correctly, you significantly retrained several things to be more defensive with your shield for your party.
Correct.
So you have already mechanically made some of those changes.
Yeah. And that's why I said, just talk about it. Say
Right.
it out loud. Do not just hold it to your chest. Just say like, hey guys, I'm pretty pissed right now. My character got crit last round, and I hate the feeling of being weak or out of power position because remember my character grew up as a slave. And so the idea that anyone would have power over him, I can't stand it. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to charge that dude next turn.
Tactics be damned.
Going in. Sorry, guys.
I get that.
Leroy
I get
Jenkins.
that. I get that leaves everybody in a bad position. But I want to let you know that that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Love it.
And if it's within character, it makes sense. Absolutely.
Right. Well, now it is.
Yeah.
Right.
But
even if it wasn't in character, it is now.
It is now. Yeah, you make the character the way you want it to be.
That's right.
Exactly.
And feel free to evolve over time.
Yeah. Now, Bob, we started this conversation with you because you said before the camera started rolling, Bob was like, I'm really boring.
I still think I'm boring.
So what is it? What do you think?
So I think when I see Tim talk about the sweet casting his glowing arch, I have this great visual narrative in my head about how it's happening, and I don't have that. I swing my axe. Second attack, let me look at my character sheet. Swing my axe again, or swing my hammer, my maul again. Look at my character sheet. I'm gonna do this third thing. I think my turns are extremely boring. I think my character doesn't have a lot of depth. And I think that's a fault of me just not being experienced in role playing or in RPGs in general. And I'm getting better. I think I am getting better. But I think I come from a place where I'm just, PF2 is complicated. So that's also a little bit too. So I'm always in the reference back to my character sheet. But I just feel like when I watch Tim or some of our other friends, it just feels so natural to them. And I kind of like that. And that's what I was talking about. Should I be more narrative driven in my approach, or does it better if I come from a motivational standpoint?
I'll tell you this. I think it comes from motivation, because I'll say this. What anybody says at a session is lost to the sands of time. Obviously, YouTube, we're recording.
Yes.
We have a little bit of thing. But I mean, unless it's like a legendary epic one-liner like Tim was talking about, what was actually said at a session, nobody remembers. But what you do remember is like how you felt. Yeah. You know, and you remember that 10,000 foot view of a character, you know, as opposed to just some faceless.
And that's what I want to get. That's what I'm actually getting out of this conversation. I think it's actually helping me, and I'm hoping helping you. But I think I need to look at sort of my do's and don'ts, my motivation behind my guy.
I do want to actually disagree with part of what you're saying, though.
Trying to fight me, bro?
A little bit, yeah. Because you might be that way in combat. When it's outside of combat, you do have that great role playing aspect of it with Azius.
I don't know.
The bars, the drinking, because you were a bartender in the past.
That again might just be me.
Well, no, but it's. Do you get what I'm saying though?
That's why. Am I getting confused? Like, am I getting overwhelmed from the combat and then I'm pulling back?
Well,
I can set my motivation.
I definitely think that's part of it. But to your point, Nick, I do agree that Bob does a good job of that when we're not in combat or certain circumstances. But I will say this. There's role-playing fluff, right? And then there's like role-playing, like, this is the hard stuff. And what I mean to that is like, you know, a lot of that stuff like, oh, we're in a bar, we're in town, I'm going to go, you know, find the tavern. Like, that's like window dressing. You know what I mean? Like when like the mayor of the town, you know, asks you to help, and because you deny all political authority, you spit in his face and says, I don't take orders from you, right? That's more of like a impactful thing, right? There's role playing that you just do to kind of like, you know, add a little flavor, add a little spice, you know? But what I think you should do is find and figure out motivations for your character that are going to cause problems.
You've talked about this,
right? Like cause conflict with people in the party, conflict with elements of the story or elements of the game world, things that are going to be difficult, right? Because that's what makes it interesting.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Drama sells.
Well, yeah, but
if it's always the same thing, I'm going to go in, I'm going to attack, we're all going to be happy and all that stuff.
Well, that's what I'm kind of
right? Make it hard.
Yeah.
Make it hard on yourself. Go out of your way.
I have lots of stories where Derek and I were in the same campaign, and he was a lawful good paladin, and I was like a wizard seeking knowledge, right? So I'm like, oh, discover all the things. And we come across a vampire with an awesome high-level meta magic rod shoved through its chest. Well, the paladin immediately destroyed that and the vampire because that was evil, whereas the wizard's like, can we get that rod though? Right? And that was like a clear party conflict. The paladin just did it. Yeah, my character didn't like the paladin very much.
And when people say party conflicts are bad, like I didn't have a problem with Tim.
Right.
In fact, I would argue that Derek, the player, would love for Tim to have a powerful magical item.
Yes.
But my character was like, no, I'm not letting you have this evil item.
No,
right. Especially if it means freeing an undead.
Right.
Right. And so my conflict wasn't between me and Tim. It was between my character and Tim's character.
Right.
And that can make things really fun and really interesting.
And it was a cool moment. And, you know, while Derek's character just did the thing, I was still like, now we have this between our characters forever. So there was another session where there was an evil artifact, and fortunately for my character, the paladin was not around. So
yeah, and so now the next time Tim does something and goes behind my character's back and does something shady, I go, yeah, okay,
right.
I know why you're doing it.
We all understand the motivation.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Like I'm not mad at Tim. My character might be mad at Tim.
If he found
Tim's
out.
character, but if he found out. But me, Derek, I think that's hilarious.
I think it's awesome.
No, it's like a great dynamic.
Absolutely. Right, exactly.
I loved telling the story to Derek like later that day. I was like, hey, man.
So I really think it comes down to motivation and personality and picking a few things and asking yourself, what are the things that my character would die for? What does my character live for? What would he never do? What would she always do? Or what does she always do? And, you know, you can think about why those things are true. You know, I will never allow myself to be taken prisoner. Okay, maybe you build something in your backstory about why that's true. But the important thing is that in the game, you allow that to influence your actions. If you're going to go through all this work of creating a backstory that no one's going to read, if you're going to do all that work, why not at least let it inform your decisions? Because that's the key. If you're sitting there in any situation, whether it's a skill-based situation or whether it's just a dialogue-driven situation or a combat situation, and the only thing that you're thinking about is, like, what has my highest bonus to hit or what is my best skill with the highest bonus, you're missing the point of role-playing games. You're missing the point. Save yourself a lot of time and go play a video game or go play World of Warcraft because you're missing the point. The point is to not find the optimal line. It's to find the fun line.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, what is going to make for a great story, right? We all have someone in our lives, right? Someone who you go, never in a million years would I hire this person. Would I want to work with this person? You know, but man, that person's crazy. And they have, like, my times with them are the craziest, best moments.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everyone knows someone.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you're like, it's insane because you're like, I would never purposely put myself with that person. But when it happens, it's insane, right? That's D&D every week.
Right.
Yep.
You get to be that person. In real life, you will never be that person. Bob, you will never be that person.
Aww.
But in D&D, he could be. You could be
right.
that crazy zany guy that whenever you hang out with, you got to make sure you have 50 feet of rope and and a water breathing potion, because you never know.
That's right.
You just never know what's going to happen.
And that's too with, like, all games, video games as well. You played. How many people have played numerous video games? And yeah, it was a good story and it was all that. But the best stories that come out of it when stupid, crazy stuff happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, my cousin and I were playing Halo 1 and we got the Warthog through the entire mission. Didn't care about anything else. It was, we're taking this one Warthog, going through every elevator, every corridor, everything. Took us a long time to do it.
Right.
But it's a great story.
Oh, of course.
And I would argue that you two just role played in Halo somehow, right? Like,
Somehow,
you gave
someway,
your Master
yes.
Chief's character motivation.
Right. It was a silly motivation, but it was a motivation.
But it was a motivation.
It was
and
a
they said,
challenge we were accepting
Right.
and going for it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we did it.
that's
you
all
know?
it takes.
Yeah.
But my point is, you're setting up those memorable moments.
Yep.
You're not just, okay, I beat the campaign, I
Right.
beat the AP, we
Right.
beat the sandbox. It's
Right.
those great stories. that
The
stay
story
with
of, hey, I just played this role-playing game and we played this adventure, or I just played this video game. It's like, oh, what happened? The same thing that happened in everyone else's game. They're going to be like, oh, good story, bro.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
It-
exactly.
cool, bro.
It's not memorable.
It's not memorable.
Until you lock Burl into a cell with
That was awesome.
Right. It's the unexpected that makes it fun. I mean, that's why we play D&D, right? That's why we have dice.
Right.
Why we roll them and we respect them. Don't fudge.
Please don't fudge.
I got to tell you, this mirror thing is really difficult. But don't fudge, okay? Because you're robbing it of the fun of the game, which is the unexpected and the suboptimal and the shitty. It makes for a good game experience.
It's like gambling, right?
It is.
You pull the lever and I didn't win. But
Right.
the one time you pull that lever and you win, it's the
So-
big rush.
Hypothetically, this is a less expensive gamble.
Well, yeah,
Depends how much Dwarven Forge you buy.
Not certainly not less expensive for us.
So, what are your characters' motivations? What do you do to increase your role playing at the table? What do you think about some of the points that were brought up today? We'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below. And if you care to join us on a more day-to-day basis, we do have a Knights of Last Call Discord, which is available to our patrons. I want to give a special shout out to Ross Salupo, Pierre, Big Jabroni, Aaron Smith, Dr. Mac, and Charles Hemsworth, all who have signed up for our Patreon in the last month. We are so appreciative of what you guys are doing for us, guys and gals are doing for us. And I really, really mean that. The support we've gotten from everyone is incredible, and I'm glad that everyone is enjoying these conversations. Our actual play, life has kind of gotten a little bit busy. It's been hard to get the whole group together, as you may have noticed from these last couple of night lives where we've been missing a few party members. But we do hope to get our actual play back on the rail. In the meantime, we're taking all this experience that we've gained from playing these last 22 amazing sessions of Rise of the Rune Lords, and we've been using it to talk about games. And, it's a lot of fun. So join us next time on Knights of Last Call.